What's up? This is Technically Correct with Tyler Bischoff, and on today's show, UNLV basketball has lost nearly its entire roster, and they haven't actually replaced anybody with anyone from the transfer portal. It's a great time to be a college basketball fan. I did not have a show last week. I made the rookie mistake of sort of waiting for more news to happen, and then it just never did. So there never ended up being a show when I absolutely should have done one last week. But don't worry, I'm back. Technically Correct is here. Don't have any football on today's show. Probably going to do some more UNLV football on next week's show. Spring practice is here. Jackson Arnold is throwing passes. Dan Mullen is the greatest coach in the group of five, obviously. So we'll do some more of that a little bit later. But it's transfer portal time in college basketball. And right now, UNLV's lost nearly everything. Tyron Jones is coming back. That was announced that he was re-signing and coming back to UNLV. We don't know, at least as of this recording, we don't know what's happening with Isaac Williamson. He has not been announced as entering the transfer portal, and I have not seen anything about him guaranteed to be coming back either. Outside of those two, everyone else is gone. Now, UNLV did have, 4 players that graduated that were out of eligibility. So a decent chunk, at least, is not because of the portal. A decent chunk is graduating, but there's a lot of guys in the transfer portal. Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn is obviously the headliner. That's the one that UNLV really would have wanted to have come back. That's going to be the one that gets decent offers, you would think. Evan Maya, who does individual player transfer portal rankings, had him as the 69th best player. Now, if more players go in, he could move down some from that, but you're looking at a top 100 player in Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn in the transfer portal. So that's the big one. That's the one that's gone. The rest of it, Jacob Benarby, blew his last name. Jacob Benarby is in the top 400. He's like 380, 390, something like that. Everyone else for UNLV is outside the top 700 of transfer portal rankings. Miles Che is 704. He's the third best player for UNLV that's in the portal. So you're looking at guys like Emmanuel Stephan, Miles Che, Laji Dembele. None of these guys, the Cunninghams, Nas Cunningham, Jalen Cunningham, none of these guys are in the top 700, which, optimistically speaking, you'd think UNLV can actually land guys that are in the top 5, 4, 300. A few of them in the top 5, 4, 300, and the roster would be better based on these transfer portal rankings. But it goes to show how hard it is to actually build out a good roster in the portal, because what did Josh Pastner do last year? He built this roster out in the portal, and now a lot of them are back in the portal, and only one of them is highly ranked. Only a second one is even decently ranked. So that's where we're at in terms of players that are gone. What it means for UNLV next season is there's not going to be much continuity. Between Tyron Jones and Isaac Williamson, 23% of UNLV's minutes are returning. And again, we don't even know if Williamson is coming back or not. So that number might get smaller if he does enter the transfer portal. That 23% is better than last year. Last year, UNLV brought back 1.9% of its minutes, so 23% solid. The year before that, which was Kevin Kruger's last season, the number was 24%. So basically the same number as what Kruger had in his last year. 3 seasons ago, it was 31%. The last time it was over 40% was 2019-2020. TJ Otzelberger's, his first season? And the last time UNLV had a minutes continuity, the same amount of minutes coming over from last year that was over 50%, was 2011 and 2012. So UNLV has not had continuity for a long time. The good news is that the rest of college basketball doesn't have that continuity either. UNLV used to be an outlier where they were continuously, the end of the Dave Rice years until now, they were always near the bottom, never having a lot of the same players back-to-back seasons. Now the rest of college basketball does the same thing, because that 23%, that minutes continuity, that would have ranked 173rd this past season, which is about dead average in college basketball. So 23% is actually not going to be bad. It's going to be about average this season as well. But Josh Pastner took time during the season to talk about continuity, to talk about having guys return, and how important that was to rebuilding the program, how important that was to making UNLV good again, was having guys that stay in the program year after year, and how year one is, he used the phrase, setting the foundation, right? Side note, kind of weird for a coach to talk about the offseason in the middle of the season, but I understand why he did. And he did it multiple times. But that's not really going to happen for this team. Tyron Jones is great to have back. That is a huge win for Josh Pastner and a huge win for UNLV. Isaac Williamson coming back, maybe as well. But that's not really setting a foundation. At the end of the day, whatever UNLV's 8 or 9-man rotation, we'll see how many players Pastner plays when they're in the middle of the season, but whatever this 8 or 9-man rotation is going to be, there's going to be 7 new guys that are in it, right? Like whatever foundation you were trying to build, it's only Tyron Jones and maybe Isaac Williamson. That's it. And here's the other key to it. We'll, for the sake of it, assume Williamson's coming back. What are those players in college basketball? And let's say, for example, next year, UNLV makes the NCAA tournament as an at-large team, not as like, oh, they won the Mountain West and they got in as like a 15. Let's say they were legitimately good enough to make the NCAA tournament as like a 10 seed, whatever, right? What is Tyron Jones on an NCAA tournament team? Because I think Tyron Jones, he is a starter on an NCAA tournament level team. He is good enough to be a starter on an NCAA tournament team. However, I think offensively, you have to have 2 players that are better than him, specifically like offensive creators. Because Tyron Jones, yeah, he can score from 15 feet away off the dribble, beating a guy, something like that, but he's not going to do it enough to really sustain an offense, right? He is a tertiary option on offense. So you need at least 2 guys that are better than him on offense. By the way, if he can develop any sort of shooting, he'd be an incredible third option. Tyron Jones, as he was as a freshman, shooting 33% from 3, he's probably not at UNLV anymore, but he's so much better. It's crazy how much better and more valuable of a player he is if there's even just a slightly below average 3-point threat from him. If that exists next year for him, he's going to be a terrific third option if UNLV gets a couple of players. But I think in reality, if UNLV is an NCAA tournament team, Tyron Jones needs to be the third offensive option. And fourth would be ideal, right? Defensively, he's terrific. He's a great weak side shot blocker. His length makes up for any sort of, like, if he gets beat off the dribble or by a step, he's long enough and athletic enough that he can still block or alter the shot. Like, defensively, he's really good. You don't have to look around and say, oh, we got to really figure out some defensive things to make Tyron Jones work. No. He works as is, right? Now, Isaac Williamson is a bench player on a tournament team, right? In theory, he gets better next season, right? Like, it's a logical thing to think. Not everybody does, but in theory, he gets better. But what he was is his first year at UNLV, he shot 33% from 3, which is fine if you're Tyron Jones, but it's not great for a 2-guard, right? He was also UNLV's worst finisher at the rim. He shot 48% at the rim this past season. Only player on the team that shot under 50% on layups this past year. So is Williamson going to become a much better 3-point shooter? Can he shoot 38% from 3 next year? And is Isaac Williamson going to become a much better finisher, where he's finishing at 58%, 60% from the rim? Can he improve both of those numbers by significant amounts? I think that's being really optimistic, right? He only took 65 layups this year, so the sample size is pretty small, so it actually is possible that goes up significantly. But is he going to improve both of those by a significant margin to make himself a much more viable player, a starting level player on a tournament team? Probably not. The player that Williamson was last season, you don't want him anything more than probably the 8th guy on the team, right? Like, you want to have at least 3 guards, if not 4 guards, that are better than him. Can he get better? Absolutely. But I would guess the ceiling on a tournament team next year is he's the first guard off the bench, right? Maybe if your other 4 starters are just awesome, he can be your 5th starter. But I think the ceiling is probably the first guard off the bench if it's a tournament team. And the reason that I spelled it out like that is I think that's a good way to gauge roster building for UNLV, right? I think that's a good way, like as UNLV eventually brings players in, where do those guys stack up against Isaac Williamson and Tyron Jones, right? Like if UNLV brings in a haul of transfers, they get 8 transfers coming in, and only one of them is a better offensive player than Tyron Jones. That's not good, right? Then they're not going to have enough offense to go to the NCAA tournament, right? And, but if they bring in 3 that are better, that's fantastic. And the offense is probably going to be awesome. And like with Isaac Williamson, if they bring in 8 new guys and only like 3 of them are better than Isaac Williamson, this team's not going to the NCAA tournament next year. If they bring in 8 new guys and all 8 are better than Isaac Williamson, they might be going to the NCAA tournament next season. So like that's kind of, I think, a good way to gauge it with the players they have coming back and sort of building the roster. Obviously, you can just look at recruiting transfer portal rankings and just see where guys stack up. That's going to be a good way to do it too. But as far as like building of the team and how the roster works, what do they have and sort of where do the other players fit around them and how much better or worse are they than an Isaac Williamson or a Tyron Jones? Now, in the actual transfer portal, UNLV has not landed anyone. Is that a big deal to you? Probably should be. You're a UNLV basketball fan. You're listening to this, for God's sake. They haven't landed anybody, at least as of recording this. It's college kids. They might announce in the middle of the night. More likely it's at 5 a.m. Pacific time because they're transferring from ACC school or something like that. And they don't understand it's so early in the morning. But UNLV hasn't landed anybody in the portal. I think an important note right now, there are less than 100 players that have gone in the portal and already committed to a new school. It is not normal for teams to have a whole bunch of transfers. In fact, it's pretty normal for teams to have no incoming transfers just yet. And for the schools that are going to be in the Mountain West next year, not a single Mountain West school has landed a transfer in the top 500. There's a couple of guys that have transferred in, like San Jose State has a guy, but none of them in the top 500. There's not a single player coming into a Mountain West school right now that if you're UNLV, you'd be like, oh, damn, I wish we had landed that guy or a guy as good as that. So, no, it's not good because it's the middle of April and UNLV has maybe 2 guys on the roster, but it's also not really a time for panic or anything like that because not many guys are actually committing, and it feels like we're going to get that in the near future. I will say this. The next month, probably less than, but the next month is probably the most important month in Josh Pastner's tenure as UNLV basketball coach. Obviously, winning games, and if you're in the tournament, it's going to look back and be like, why the hell would you think April of 2026 was more important than March of whatever tournament they're in? But Josh Pastner has to build an NCAA tournament team, and he has to do it in the portal. And the way college basketball works, he's probably going to have to do that every single season. The idea of keeping guys, like keeping 6 players around, it's probably not going to happen, right? Like imagine best case scenario, UNLV goes to the NCAA tournament next year, right? Like they win the Mountain West, they go to the tournament as a single digit seed, something like that. Maybe they win a game at the tournament. Are you keeping all those guys? They're probably gone. I mean, UNLV didn't get even close to the tournament this year. Dre Gibbs Lawhorn's in the portal. It was a no-doubter to get into the portal. So, like, if you have a good season at UNLV's level, you're probably losing the players. And we just saw they didn't have a good season. They lost the players anyways. So you're going to have to do this every single offseason. Josh Pastner didn't do it last year. It's probably not fair to say, hey, you need to build an NCAA tournament team your very first season, but you probably need to show you can do it in year 2. And I said on the last show that I did, right? I don't think it's fair to just black and white say Pastner make the NCAA tournament or it's fire him or he's done or whatever. I think there's got to be clear improvement. You should probably be a little bit close. My one bar that no coach can seem to hit is, can you play a meaningful game in February? That's it. Just one game in February that has some NCAA tournament meaning. Haven't done that in over a decade. That's kind of the bar, I think, for next year. So it's not like, hey, go build a tournament team in the portal, or obviously Pastner's a bum and it's never going to work. But you got to get one close. And I think we need to see, can UNLV, can Josh Pastner land good players and a good team in the transfer portal? Because one of the things that a school like UNLV has to do is develop players that didn't get a lot of playing time the year before. Trey Gibbs-Lawhorn is obviously a great example, but we also saw it when Kevin Kruger was here, Donovan Williams and Royce Ham, right? Guys like that. Going and getting players that are on the end of the bench at a Big Ten school, an SEC school, and giving them now 25, 30, 35 minutes and having them become really good college basketball players, at least really good at the Mountain West level. The problem is, and we saw it with Trey Gibbs-Lawhorn last year, 10 games into last season, was Trey Gibbs-Lawhorn going to be one of the top 100 players in the transfer portal? No, he wasn't. Because Trey Gibbs-Lawhorn wasn't that good at the start of last season. He became the best scoring guard, best scoring player in the Mountain West as the season went on. It's a very good thing that Josh Pastner and Trey Gibbs-Lawhorn did. But you have to be good from the jump. Like, if you're UNLV and you're going to go to the tournament, you can't afford, okay, the first 10 games of the year, we might not be good, right? Like, we're putting together a bunch of guys who averaged 2.5 minutes per game last year. After 15 games, we're going to see some signs of improvement, and then we'll hit our stride. You can't afford that. You can't lose the quad 4 games at the early part of the season. Whatever quad 1 games you have, you need to win one of them, 2 of them, right? So, like, you're always going to have to go find a Trey Gibbs-Lawhorn. That's going to happen every year. But if that's the entire plan, it's probably never going to work, because those guys, like a Trey Gibbs-Lawhorn, is just not going to be good from the jump like he was at the end of the season. So it's really important what they build in the portal is good from the start, right? And you can get better, but it's got to be close to NCAA tournament level from the start. That, I think, is the key, and that's going to be something Pastner has to figure out. And yes, Miles Che being hurt, Elijah Dembele being hurt, I know. I heard it 1,000 times from Pastner. Yes, not great. In theory, they're not going to have 2 of their more important players hurt at the start of the season. But, like, can he actually do this? I think that's going to be one of the biggest keys in this next month. We're going to know how good is Josh Pastner at this, and is it actually going to work? Because if a month from now we're talking about, all right, they landed one guy in the top 300 of the transfer portal rankings, and then a couple of guys that were like 4'11 and 5'15, and then just a bunch of other guys. So I'm like, all right, they're not going to the NCAA tournament, and Josh Pastner can't do this. It might be as simple as that. Last thing I want to talk about on the show today. The NCAA has a new eligibility proposal. Their proposal, and again, just a proposal. So it's the Yahoo reported that even if this were to go in place, the quickest is it would take months for them just to figure out what the details were, and then implementation would be rolled out slowly, not immediately. But a new proposal for eligibility, and that is every player, everyone, would have 5 years of eligibility starting once a player either graduates high school or turns 19 years old. There would be no more red shirts. There would be no more medical red shirts. There'd be no more, hey, I'm applying for a waiver. It is just simply, you get 5 years to play 5 seasons. That's it. The story in Yahoo did say there would be a small group of outliers, and they highlighted things like maternity leave, military service, or religious missions. So BYU would still be able to play with 26-year-olds. But there would not be a Trinidad Chambliss situation, right? Where he goes to Ferris State, has maybe a medical red shirt, maybe not a medical red shirt. There's a waiver, and he gets cleared, and he can come back and play. There wouldn't be the Charles Bediako situation at Alabama this year, right? It would just be, you got 5 years to play 5 seasons of college sports. That's it. I think this is something that the NCAA needs in place. And it doesn't necessarily have to be this exact rule, but I think a just blanket, straightforward eligibility rule. I think that needs to be in place. Josh Pastner at one point this season mentioned something like a U22 or U25, whatever, where it's like you just have to be under this age to play. Something where it's just straightforward and blanket, where there's no question marks, because the waivers and the court cases, it's kind of ridiculous that that's happening. And part of the issue is that college athletics, now that it is basically professional athletics, but college athletics has never been about, hey, we're trying to find the best players in the world, right? The NBA is trying to find the best basketball players in the world. There is no, are you eligible or not eligible, like, except for like if you're coming out of high school. It is just, are you one of the best basketball players in the world? It's not like, you're too old to do this, or you played somewhere else for 4 years. No. But in college, it's never been about that. College, it's always been about, well, you're going to the school and you represent the school, but then how the hell do you figure out their eligibility? Because people go back to school when they're 70, right? But we all know that 35-year-olds shouldn't be playing college basketball. And so I think they need something like this, where it's just, yeah, cool. You broke your leg. We're sorry. You have 5 years to play 5 seasons. That's the rule. And once you hit those 5 years, or 24, whatever you want it to be, sorry, you're done. Like, that's just the rules that we're going to make. And I think that would be fine. The other thing, and I don't know if this ever actually happens, but there needs to be contracts for players. Like, this is professional sports. There needs to be contracts for players with buyouts similar to coaches. And teams and players can agree to sign a 1-year contract, just like professional sports, or a 5-year contract, or anything in between, right? But I think that needs to happen, because what sucks about being a fan of a college sports team right now is the lack of connection to the team on a player basis. Because if you're a fan of a professional sports team, right, there's a lot of turnover in professional sports, but generally speaking, you're going to have a favorite player that plays for 6, 7, 10 years with the team, right? Like, I mean, that happens. You're going to have guys that play with the same team over and over and over. Yes, there's player movement. Yes, your favorite players end up on different teams. They get traded, whatever it is. But there's at least some consistency from year to year, right? Like, I'm a Houston Astros fan. There's not a lot of fun to watch the Astros, but one of the fun things is that Jose Altuve is one of my favorite baseball players to watch. And he's been an Astro his entire career. And so even though they suck right now, I will still enjoy that. So you don't have that in college basketball right now, right? Like, it's a huge deal that Tyron Jones is coming back. You get that one player for UNLV next season. But like, Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn just had one of the best seasons a UNLV basketball player has had in years. And UNLV fans get to experience it for one season. They don't go to the NCAA tournament. It's like, okay, what, like, as a fan, what connection do you feel to Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn after having I know he didn't win it, but a Mountain West Player of the Year type of season? Probably not much, because he's in the transfer portal and going somewhere else. And it's hard to blame him for doing that, because he's probably going to go make, I don't know, $1 million in the portal. And it's going to be the most money he makes in a single season of playing basketball his entire life. But there probably should be some form of contract signed by players to teams. But to have that, you've got to have some form of collective bargaining, which means the players need to have a union. And there's so many sports and there's so many players that just seems like an effort that, is it ever going to happen? I don't actually know. So what do you do? I don't know what the answer is, but it just, like, it sucks to be a college sports fan right now, because what are you connected to? Like, most schools, most teams, especially basketball, are going to lose their whole roster. They're going to lose all of their starters. They're going to lose 4 or 5 starters, 6 of their top 8, stuff like that. It's like, what connection do you feel year to year to these teams? Probably none at all. And so that part of it sucks for college sports. It really does suck for college sports. And there should be something. There should be something that makes that easier just from a fan enjoyment standpoint. Right. And once we get into the season, I do this every year. Once we get into the season, you like watching that team or your favorite team or whatever, and you don't think about, oh, Dragons Lawhorn is leaving after this. He just got here and he's leaving, right? Like, you don't think about that a whole lot in season, but then at this point of the year, of the calendar, it's like, okay, who's on the basketball team? It's Tyron Jones and maybe Isaac Williamson. All right, cool. Tyron Jones dunks a lot, so that's fun. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I don't like it. I don't know what the answer is, because player movement, I think, should be allowed. Players should have some control and power in college sports. For the longest time, they had basically none. So give me the 5 years to play 5, and give me a CBA with contracts for each player for a certain amount of years. And if you want to get out of it, either both sides have to agree, or there's a buyout in place, a significant buyout in place. That not, obviously schools at the SEC would just laugh at a Mountain West school's buyout, but put something in place that makes it at least a little bit prohibitive, or at least helps out Mountain West, because doesn't feel all like college sports, right? Like, it feels a little off, even if I can't point to it and say, oh yeah, this is clearly wrong and needs to be changed. It just feels off. Anyway, thanks for listening to Technically Correct. We will be back. We will be back next week. I'll enunciate all my words. We will be back next week. I don't know why I'm saying we, because it's just me sitting here. Thank you for tuning in.